It was a military coup in 1973. There was a military dictatorship that came to power, and they proceeded to arrest, torture, and kill a bunch of people, put them in concentration camps, secret prisons. And my father was one of those people that was in a concentration camp. They released them at some point, so we ended up in a United Nations sponsored refugee facility. I became a pop star after the fall of the Soviet Union. I had been musical my whole life. I never thought it would be a profession. Not enough people dream well because we're so rational, we're so bent on stability and predictability and certainty. If nothing is certain, then anything is possible.
Well, Christian, thank you very much for joining me on Success Matters podcast. You've led quite an interesting life, from being a refugee to being a pop star to being an author to being a coach to, well, so many things, so many aspects. Let's begin with the refugee piece, right? So you were born in Chile, I believe, right? And
It's actually born in Moscow. We just moved to Chile right away. I was 6 months old when we moved.
oh, okay, all right. So at the age of 6 months, you're born in Moscow, moved to Chile.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How come your parents moved to Chile?
My father's Chilean, so they met in college, and my mom is Russian, my dad's Chilean, and they got married, and they said, okay, we're going to live in Chile. So that's where they're going to spend the rest of their lives. And if something didn't happen that was so dramatic, we would have still be there probably.
Right. Okay. And what was that dramatic thing that happened?
It was a military coup in 1973. There was a military dictatorship that came to power, and they proceeded to arrest, torture, and kill a bunch of people, put them in concentration camps, secret prisons, things like that. And my father was one of those people that was in a concentration camp for a while, for a few months. And he was lucky because they released him at some point. So we ended up in a United Nations sponsored refugee facility, protected essentially from the military outside, until we got asylum and we flew to Germany in a very dramatic fashion. They tell me that they had basically the ambassadors or representatives of the embassy would come to the refugee facility and talk to us. Where do you want to go? And present us. Then they would appeal to the countries and they would offer us asylum. So we got offered asylum in Australia and in Germany. And for some reason, my parents chose Germany. And so apparently my parents say that even taking us to the airport, they had to darken or like taped over the windows of the bus so that the military couldn't see inside. And like it was all very dramatic and secret. And so we ended up making that out of there alive, which was very lucky.
Yeah. And how old were you when this happened?
I was 5.
You're 5. Okay.
Mm-hmm,
so it must have been quite a scary time for you as a child and not knowing what's happening.
It was both scary and because my first childhood memories are actually from that time. Like I don't remember anything before that, but I think because there was so much fear in the air, it must have imprinted on me in a particular way. But also it was scary, and it was also not, because as a child you sort of get used to it quickly. So I remember playing games in this facility. They had gardens. They had like this sort of big compound, and I remember playing games with our. We made friends right away, and we're playing games and we're running around and climbing trees. And, it was just such a normal childlike behavior in the midst of a lot of drama. And there was one moment where I think they showed us, we were so bored, right? Because we can't get out. I think they showed us like a black and white film of Tarzan from like the 60s or something like that. And so we were very excited about Tarzan in that facility. And so I climbed the tree and I did the Tarzan yell, and I did it right over because it was over the fence of a soldier with a gun. And he was so startled that he cocked his gun because he was afraid, because that was real. And I was so petrified. I just flew from that tree all the way in to see my mom. And, but I remember that so distinctly. It was so hilarious.
Yeah. Wow. And this was General Pinochet, was it?
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I vaguely remember I was probably about 6 or 7 years of age when that coup happened, and so vaguely remember in the news hearing about it and reading about it. So yes, it must have been very scary. So you ended up in Germany, and then from Germany back to Russia?
No, from Germany back to Russia. We were actually going to stay there. They were so welcoming, and I'm still so very grateful for the generosity of the German people, because they gave us an apartment. They were, sort of helping my dad. I think he was working already in Lufthansa. They were just going to settle us there. And my mom was I think she was so shell shocked from the whole affair that she just wanted to go home. And I still don't understand why my dad says yes to go from West Germany to the Soviet Union, but that's what they did. And we ended up in this communal apartment living with another family. It was just terrible, I remember I got sick a lot. I was in the hospital. I think the weather really crushed me. I had pneumonia like 4 times in a row, like so much so that my parents thought I was going to die, And
Right.
so it was just sort of, I remember that time with that, not with fond memories, but with misery, pure misery.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yes. So you've gone from Chile, you've gone to West Germany. What was West Germany at
Yeah.
the time?
Yeah.
Fairly settled, and then back to Russia, where things weren't quite as settled. And of course, winters in Russia can be brutal.
Brutal.
So
Yeah.
so that must have been a real shock. So then you went to somewhere sunny, I think.
Yeah. So my dad, my father got a contract to work in Mozambique in Africa as an expert.
Right.
And he went ahead of us. So, and then I was actually going to go. My mom was finishing up, I think, some sort of study. She was getting a second degree of some sort. And I was going to go with her, so like 6 months later or more even. And she was so nervous about my health that she literally told my dad, I think he's going to die if we don't send him to you. And they sent me ahead of my mom to my dad. And it was a full year before she joined us, actually.
Oh, wow.
So we were there without her for a full year.
Yeah.
And I remember literally walking in a blizzard to the plane in Moscow, an actual blizzard, and getting on a plane, and then 20 or so hours later, because you have to sort of change planes or something, or stop somewhere for refueling. I remember the doors opened, and this hot tropical air just flooded the plane.
Yeah.
And it was so big. The contrast was so drastic, And I just remember going, this is a whole new world. And it was people look differently, talk differently. And I was 7 years old.
Right.
And it was a completely different reality.
Wow. Yeah. So a lot of change in just a couple of years for you, from Chile to Germany, Moscow, and Mozambique. So how long was your family in Mozambique for?
For 7 years.
For 7 years. Okay.
Yeah. So until I was a teenager, I was 14 years old when we left.
Right. And so that must be when you went back to Russia, maybe?
Yes. Yeah.
Or another location.
And my parents got divorced, and my mom, I think she has a default where things go bad, she wants to go home. So
Back to Russia, yeah.
So we went back to the Soviet Union. Yes.
Right.
We did.
And the Soviet Union is where, well, I don't know if it was still the Soviet Union at the time, you became a pop star.
I became a pop star after the fall of the Soviet Union. Yeah. Okay. So I went to college. We went to high school there, finished high school, went to college, got a degree in economics. And sort of maybe a year later, I was like, I think I'm going to try to do music. And it was this sort of time of freedom. The only decade of freedom in the whole of history of Russia. Actual freedom. And of course, that all reverted in the 2000s, and that's it. It's done.
Yeah.
But that time was an exciting time because it was sort of chaotic. There was a lot of crime as well, but it was truly like free press, free commerce, all of that. All of that was there. And I had been musical my whole life. I danced, I sang. I never thought it would be a profession. And then something sort of clicked in me, and I went, I'm so bored with this. I was sort of a low-level job at an international trading company, and I just hated it, and I was like, you know what? if there's a time to try something crazy like this, now probably is the time. So I did.
Right. And how did you? I mean, like lots of people have a dream, right, to become a pop star. How did you go about actually making that happen and making it a reality?
I just small steps. And I was actually not that good at all. I think I did like backup singing for this little one group for just a little bit, and a little dancing, a little singing, and it was just okay. And I sort of was in the entourage of musicians because I wanted to be around them. And I was at this after party after a big show, and some famous musician who was my friend invited me, hey, come join us. I just wanted to be in the ecosystem basically at the time.
Okay.
And I was just sort of there, and a guy comes over, and he's this short guy, and he says, are you an artist? And I sort of looked the part before I was the part.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah. He goes, I own a music studio. And if I give you some night hours, like free hours, what would you do with that? And I'm like, I would love to record some songs. And at the time, you couldn't record at home. The technology wasn't available.
Right.
So the only way for a musician to even record anything half decent would be access to a studio. And there were, I don't know, 3 maybe in the whole city.
Mm-hmm.
It was just impossible at the time. So if somebody says, I'll give you access to a studio, you say yes, right? And he said, okay, so so maybe, because I looked sort of artistic, right? I had this long hair, I looked exotic, I dressed a certain way, I came across, I had the vibe. And he goes, so who's going to write the song? I'm going to write the song. Who's going to write the lyrics? I'm going to write the lyrics. Okay, great. Okay, call me when you have something to show me. And I had never written a song or a lyric in my whole life. So I went home, wrote a couple of quick songs on like a little recording thing, no music, just my voice. And then I brought it to him, and I'm like, hey, here's some of the vocals. He said, okay, why don't you try? Here's my producer. He's going to do some arranging for you. And the guy was terrible. He smoked pot all the time. He didn't get it at all. And so I had to go find another guy who might be a little bit closer to what I wanted. And that's how I found my co-producer, who became, and he was a keyboard player in a night restaurant at the time. And he became one of the top producers in Russia for decades and decades, still is actually very well known. And his bass guitar player was like responsible to get money from clients who wanted to ask for a song that they played in a night restaurant. And he became our manager. Yeah, he became also a top producer in Russian show business in a few years, just because we partnered together.
Wow. Okay. So that one chance encounter, getting the 3 hours in the recording studio, that's such a fun career.
Yeah, it's another a few songs, and then I recorded some dancers. I choreographed. I did this whole show, not a show. It's a micro show, like 5 songs. But I did it at a level that no one has seen before, right? It took me 6 years to put it together, 6 months to put it together, like 3-4 hours a day, every day. And then we auditioned at a local club, and they hired us on the spot, and that was it. It was just, then it was somebody else invited us. We became sort of locally known by the elite, in the capital. And then by the end of the year, people were offering me record contracts, and I was on national television, New Year's Eve. Woke up January 1st, basically famous, because everybody watches the same show New Year's Eve in Russia. So yeah. Uh-huh.
So your career took off. How long did you remain as a musician and a pop artist?
About a decade. Okay. Then I transitioned out because I got bored, basically, with it. I didn't like it anymore.
Right. What was it? It was boring. Did it become just too routine in terms of what you were doing? Or?
Yeah, I think it was. I remember the time where I decided to, and I think, I see that in a lot of professionals, actually, where you get a lot of success and your values change, or your desires change, or your aspirations change, but you don't have the courage to start something new because you're respected in this particular thing, right? In this particular place. So people usually don't leave because of a gut feeling, and then just sort of press on because of fear of the uncertainty. And I had one of those moments. I was right in the train going on tour with multi-city tour. We were playing sports arenas by then, right? We're playing big shows. And I had this thought, is this all there is for me, in my mind? And I remember going, well, what are you talking about? You're living the dream, dude, And, but at the
Hmm.
same time, there was this very, very specific sort of thought that, for a musician, I'm living the dream. And there are musicians who, that's all they want to do. They want to do music all of their lives. I'm just not one of those guys. I grew up all over the world. I speak 4 languages and I have a degree. I wanted to do entrepreneurship. I wanted to do philanthropy. I was very inspired by that kind of thing.
Hmm.
I became a Christian at the time, so I wanted to do some spiritual work or something like that to help people spiritually. So I had all these interests that were brewing in me, and they were all dormant in this particular space. I also wanted to start a family, and I knew that I didn't want my family to break apart like mine did when I was growing up. And my lifestyle was not very conducive, let's put it that way, right? So all these other nuances and sort of almost like undercurrents bubbled up. And I said, you know what? I feel like I need to transition out and try new things. And also to other places. The geography was a bit boring. It's all former Soviet Union. It was 15 countries. It was a big territory, but I'm a world citizen. I wanted to do more in other places. And so all of that sort of bubbled up and I eventually transitioned out.
And what did that transition look like? Did you
I
just
did,
stop one day and
I,
leave Russia, or?
I did I did philanthropy and Christian ministry for a little bit, for a few years. We
Mhm.
moved. By then, I got married. In that transition, I got married. We had 2 children. I had an older daughter from a previous relationship who I got reunited with in a really amazing way. And eventually, we had to move to the States because my wife, she's American. Her health was really deteriorating with the weather. The weather
Mhm.
there is really terrible. And so we were like, you know what, I can't stay here. So when we moved to the States, I did a few years of philanthropic work. I was VP for a big company. I was in charge of Latin America, a pretty big national, like a $2.9 million national project, and I did that for a while. I was very, very, very seriously wanting to learn how to help people. Um, and then eventually that ran its course and I started a production company in Los Angeles. We did music production and music videos. So we sort of did a full circle, but started doing it in Hollywood for international artists.
Right.
So that was sort of the next step after that.
Okay. And now you're a businessman and a coach and
Yeah, yeah, and
philanthropist still.
that production company did really well until it didn't, because the market
Okay.
was super narrow, and I didn't diversify, unfortunately, and it died in like 6 months. So I had to start a new one called Third Drive Media, which is I still have that one, and it's basically a digital media brand strategy kind of company. And it's sort of does the same thing, only not only for musicians but for everybody else. So personal
Right.
brands, startups, foundations, nonprofits. So, and then the coaching came a little bit later, and I just realized that I wanted to help people like I was helped. And because I know the essence of the high achiever so well, because I'm that guy. And I know what drives us, the flat sides that we have, the egos that we have, the fears that we have. So I sort of really obsessed over human flourishing for decades, even before I started my coaching. And eventually I said, okay, I think this is something I really want to do for the next 20 years.
What do you say, high achievers? Because some people may put some people off that term, right? They may not see themselves as high achievers. And something that we talked about just before we started recording was what is it that stops people achieving their full potential? What's
And I think
holding them back?
and I think by high achievers, I mean people who really have an intent to have an impact.
Hmm.
So it's not really, I wouldn't say it's a term of privilege or a term of superiority. It's a term of drive. I think there are people who find that they have this fire in their belly. They want to make a difference. They want to make a dent in the universe. And
Hmm.
and usually those people do achieve a lot. And I think the downside is that fuel that drives them is sometimes it's partially bad fuel. So I
Right.
hit some walls, hit some ceilings, and I did as well, more than once. And sort of my aspiration with the coaching is to help them flourish, run on very good fuel, on pure fuel, purified fuel, have a holistic level of success, which is across all dimensions of life, and
Mhm.
have it continuously without hitting walls and plateaus that last too long.
Right.
That's to lead an extraordinary life of impact and service to others.
Okay. Okay. So you touched on something there, which is, the title of this podcast is
Yes, I
Success
did.
Matters. So what does success mean to you? You've been on quite a journey, right? So, and has that changed as you've kind of been through this journey in life?
I think it's the manifestation of it changes. The essence doesn't. So to me, it's living in alignment with your purposes, what you are
Hmm.
meant to do. So what you're meant to do in your 20s and 30s changes, 40s changes, 60s changes, right? There's seasons in life, there's flows, there's situations even, there's a need
Hmm.
that is different, a priority that is different. What are the non-negotiables for you? What kind of impact do you want to have? And how does that play with the non-negotiables, the must-haves? What do you want to avoid? That's a very important driver, I think. You don't want in life ever. That's an important driver. So negative motivation actually can be very helpful. Um, but to me, it's alignment with what you were supposed to be doing in this season of life. That's success.
Okay. That's interesting. Way you look at it, the interesting perspective that life goes through seasons. And so what you should be doing in your 20s versus what you should be doing in your 40s is different. And so, yeah, that alignment. And that's actually probably quite important as well, because um, quite often people will kind of have a vision of, oh, yeah, when they're in their 20s, they want to have achieved what people in their 40s are achieving or whatever. And that can often cause a bit of a disconnect, right, between them
Yeah,
and their
yeah, yeah.
values and what they want to achieve. So,
Yeah, I think so. But I do think that being more receptive to your actual dreams is the thing that I just don't think people do that enough.
yeah.
I think we're
And is that
such a
because they're scared
rational.
of what they're going to lose?
Yeah,
That they're not willing
I
to
think
go after their dreams?
it's fear of failure, 100%,
Hmm.
and really at the deepest level is fear of rejection because it's very primal, right?
Right.
Yeah. People, what are people going to say, think of me, etc. And none of this is actual real risk, It really isn't, because people that love you, they will continue to love you, okay? And yeah, you'll make mistakes, fine. Who won't? You play it safe. You're going to make actually probably more mistakes.
Yeah.
Um, but I think we end up living other people's dreams, and eventually
Hmm.
that catches up with us. Eventually just grinds us to a halt, and it just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And not enough people dream well, I think, because we're so rational, we're so bent on stability and predictability and certainty, and
Mhm.
nothing good in life comes from certainty. It's just by definition.
Yes.
You will only rehash the old if you want certainty.
Yeah.
If you want something new, you will have to face uncertainty and learn how to deal with it.
Mhm.
And I think that's basically that's the breaking point, that the line that people, don't want to step over.
Yeah. And it's one of our kind of key emotional needs is certainty and
Certainty
uncertainty,
and
right?
uncertainty, yeah.
We
So
both,
I think in the West, we overlean into certainty
right?
and we underlean into uncertainty.
Hmm.
That seems to be a thing.
And maybe that's because of the nature of the society that we've created and the world that we've
Yeah,
created. Whereas someone like you went through so much uncertainty at a young age
it
that
doesn't scare you. Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't scare you. You're more used to it. Than
yeah,
the,
yeah.
the the fear of loss is not there. The fear of rejection is not
No,
necessarily strong in you.
yeah. So I have sort of that almost like unexpected blessing of a lot of uncertainty in life. But I think you can still reverse engineer it. So I'll do a lot of that work with my clients, where you can train yourself to actually not allow fear to control you.
Right.
So, but I think you're right. I think what helped me sort of in my first success is that I saw so much uncertainty for so many years, my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And that something clicked, and this is in hindsight. At the time, I didn't think of it rationally, but it was more like, well, if nothing is certain, then anything is possible. And it just sort of landed as this truth for me. I'm like, well, why not? Basically. So, and when you have that mindset of, well, why not try? Okay. And do it, give it your best shot.
Yes.
And you'll be surprised how often you'll succeed if you have that mindset. And the reason for that is because, look, if by definition, most people will aim for the middle and not for the high,
Mm-hmm.
then there's the most competition you'll find is in the middle because most people are there. But if you aim high and dream big, yes, you're going to overcome all kinds of internal things. But actually, when you get yourself to a level of mastery on that level, the competition is less. It's actually much easier to work there, to flourish there. You have more freedom, more choices. So in a way, the most risky thing you can do is to not take risks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very powerful insight, actually. And yes, if you aim high, then there's fewer people there, less competition. Not everyone is aiming high, and so therefore your chance of success are a lot more, right? And that is
yeah.
That's that kind of as a result of that. So yeah, that's a really good perspective there. I have a tradition in my podcast, which I borrowed from another one, to ask a previous guest or to ask a question for my next guest. So my previous guest asked this question, which I'll read out to you. So my previous guest said, who are you your most authentic self with, and how do they know that you're being authentic?
Oh, that's a good one.
Hmm.
I think my wife Deb and my kids.
Okay.
My 3 daughters. Yeah. They see me as I am. I'm actually pretty authentic in general, to be honest with you. Right. I don't have a lot of masks, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, but I think they see me obviously like in the most intimate spaces, and it's really fun. And how would they, how does that manifest itself? I think it's laughter. I think a lot of laughter.
Okay.
A lot of just lighthearted banter. They see that. We have that in the family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that joy that comes from just being
just
your
joy,
authentic
just
self.
being relaxed. Just
Mm-hmm.
delight. It's delight. Delight is a good word. I like that word.
Delight, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good word, yeah.
What about
delight? Vulnerability?
And vulnerability is just there. It's not even,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think delight would be the word that describes our dynamic.
Delight, yeah. That's a good word. I like that word, delight. So I'm going to kind of bank it for future use as well.
Yeah.
Conversations. So do you have a question for my next guest?
Yeah. You know what? Here's the question for your next guest. Think of a time in your youth that was a dramatic turning point, a watershed moment.
Right.
What would you say to yourself in that moment as a grown-up, as an adult?
Okay. So think of a moment in your youth that was a turning point, and what would you say to yourself now as an adult, to your younger self?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Which of all the turning points you had in your youth, which one would you focus on, and what would you say to yourself now looking back?
For me, I was 14 years old and my parents got a divorce, and it was just devastating, just devastating.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, look, things are going to be pretty rough for maybe a year or two, but you'll find your footing. And even the rough things, the things that you've gone to will equip you for extraordinary success.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll do things that you can't even imagine right now. That's what I would say to myself.
Yeah. like you, I went through a traumatic thing at the age of 14. My father died when I was 14 years of age. And for me, it was the impact I didn't really realize until more so now, that the impact that it has had on me throughout life. And I did a similar exercise maybe about 10 years ago to, revisit
Mm-hmm.
my younger self and,
Yeah.
have a conversation around, well, actually, whatever you thought at the time, just look at where you are now. And, as things are so dramatically different from maybe what you had expected at that
Yeah.
point in time. So it's a very powerful exercise to do, isn't it? To
It is.
speak
Yeah.
to your younger self and kind of clear some of those blockages that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just very. I do that with all of my clients in
Uh-huh.
I coach. Somewhere half, maybe 2/3 into the coaching program. There's a structured way. That's one of the assignments,
Right.
and it is invariably moving. Invariably,
Mm-hmm.
always, always, and it's so funny because what I see across the board, sort of the common thread of how people speak to themselves is they have this tenderness in
Right.
their voice, this compassion.
Yeah.
And they're saying it to themselves, but also they're hearing it as
Mhm.
themselves, and it's such a transformative exercise.
Yes. Yeah. I read a book recently as well. I've forgotten its title because it's kind of on my bookshelf, but I won't be able to see it right now. Where you do a similar exercise, but you actually write down everything from pretty much birth
Yeah,
to your mid-20s. I wish I could remember the name of the book. And that was also pretty transformative for me. You have to invest the time to write things down,
yeah,
but it did really help me understand what were the factors that shaped who I am today as a result of that.
yeah.
So that was a very powerful exercise, I thought, and very very kind of heartwarming. Your performance coaching company you run now, C3 Drive, is that
So
the
the
same?
third drive is the media company. So we do personal brand development,
Okay,
strategy, that kind of thing. And then Exponential Life is the coaching, is the performance
right.
coaching. Mhm.
Okay. So if people wanted to find out more about your coaching or even your media company, what's the best way for them to contact you, Christian?
If they want to find actually the work stuff, they can go to exponential.life without the E, it's spelled with an X. Uh, and then for media, they go to Third Drive Media, thirddrivemedia.com. Uh,
Okay.
but I think most of your audience, they probably can just want to maybe get some insights into life and thriving in life and everything. So if you want that, I have a newsletter that goes out every Sunday. It's free, and you can support it. You can pay like a latte a month and support the production of this thing. But you can find that at christianrayflores.com. And every Sunday I write something, I add links, books I'm reading, episodes of my podcast, guest episodes like yours and mine,
Yeah.
things like that. I put links on there as well. And it's just the best that I can find. And it goes to, a couple 20,000, 21,000 people now. So they
Right.
can subscribe to that and get it for free.
Okay. All right. So that gives some insights and
Yeah,
into
yeah.
the work and the
A
thinking.
weekly dose of inspiration and practical guidance. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And going back to the music, do you still do music, Christian?
I do it here and there. I one of my life goals right now is to sort of phase out of a couple of endeavors that I'm in.
Hmm.
I have professional ADHD. It's a condition. So I'm trying to cure that condition. And when I phase out of a couple of the things that I'm investing heavily in, I want to start recording regularly again. The last time I recorded was maybe 4 years ago. So if you want to go on Spotify and find Christian Ray Flores and the song "Dance with Me," that is literally the last song I've recorded, and
Right.
it's a good song. But I have so much more in me. I think that I just cannot find the bandwidth for right now. But I'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Is it going to be influenced by Prince, whose poster you have in the background there?
Always, always. He's in my bones.
Yes. I noticed some of your older videos, your kind of styling was akin to Prince's style.
It was Prince, it was Michael Jackson, and
Yeah.
some all the other big figures at the time. Of course, you build on the shoulders of giants, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, cool. Well, we're at the top of our time now, Christian. Thank you very much. It's been a great conversation, and your life journey has certainly been very fascinating to you, particularly in your younger years, right? To have so much change and transformation, which I think, as you've said, it's made you the person who you are today, and not so scared of the transition and the change that can happen in life. So, thank you very much for taking part in Success Matters.
Thank you, Sanjay. I'm thankful for your work, the value that you offer to your audience, and it's an honor to be here.
Thank you. To find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.